started with a knock. Not the polite kind. Not the casual welcome to the neighborhood kind. This was sharp. Urgent. Like whoever was on the other side already knew something I didn't, and needed to tell me before it was too late. It was our third night in the new house. My husband, Brian, was on a double shift at the hospital. I was alone, still figuring out where we kept the wine glasses, half listening to the hum of the dishwasher and the occasional creak of settling beams. The place was bigger than our last apartment, clean, sunlit, with tall white walls and a front porch that overlooked a row of aging oaks. It had that kind of stillness that feels earned, or stolen. We'd moved from Chicago to a quiet little suburb in North Carolina. Population barely over 10,000. One grocery store, 2 diners. The kind of town where people still waved at each other, even if they didn't know your name. I hadn't felt scared in years, until that night. It was 8:46 p.m. Exactly. I know because I was texting Brian when the doorbell rang. I froze mid-sentence. Something about the sound didn't sit right. It echoed too long, felt too loud. I peeked through the peephole, and that's when I saw him. Mid-40s, clean-shaven. Buttoned-up denim shirt, white undershirt beneath. Hair parted with obsessive precision. He looked normal. But there was something about how still he stood. No fidgeting, no blinking. Like he was rehearsing how to be human. I opened the door just a few inches, enough to speak but not enough for him to see much of me. "Is Casey home?" he asked. His voice was wrong. Too level. Like a recorded message. "I think you've got the wrong house," I said, trying to sound casual. "We just moved in. There's no Casey here." For a split second his expression cracked. The smile slipped. Then, "That's odd. I spoke to her not long ago." I stiffened. "You must be mistaken." He stared past me like trying to see into the house, like she might be hiding just out of view. Then he tilted his head ever so slightly as if listening. "I'll check back later," he said. And just like that he turned and walked off into the darkness. No rush. No hesitation. I closed the door and locked all 3 deadbolts. The moment the latch clicked, my heart started racing like it was making up for how still I'd been. Something about that man unsettled me deeply. I didn't know Casey. I wasn't sure Casey even existed. The next night he came back. I didn't answer the door. I watched from behind the curtain as he stood there longer this time, not knocking, just waiting. When he finally left, I could have sworn I saw him smile, just faintly, like he'd confirmed something, like he'd found a crack in the wall. I told Brian when he got home. He brushed it off at first, said it was probably someone with the wrong address. But when the guy came back for a 3rd time, Brian answered the door himself. "I don't know who Casey is," he said, firm but polite, standing in the doorway like a shield. "You need to stop coming here." The man didn't reply right away, just stared at Brian with a kind of quiet calculation, like he was memorizing the shape of his face. Finally he said, "Right," and walked away. That should have been and it wasn't. A few days later I saw a dark sedan parked across the street. No plates on the front. Tinted windows, lights off, engine off, just parked, watching. At first I thought it was nothing, someone waiting to pick up a friend. But the next night, it was back. Same spot, same time. 9 p.m. Then the next. And the next. The figure inside never moved, never stepped out, never turned their head. They just sat there outlined in the street lamp's glow like a statue made of shadows. Then the little thing started. The back gate. Open. We never left it open. The motion light on the side yard, flicking on in the middle of the night though nothing triggered it. The sound of the screen door creaking when no wind was blowing. Once I found a single muddy footprint on the porch mat, pointing toward the house, not away from it. It hadn't rained in days. I reported it to the local police, non-emergency. The officer on the phone was polite but distant, like I was just another bored woman in a big house with too much imagination. Probably. A delivery guy, he said. Maybe someone looking for a friend who used to live there. We'll send a patrol car by sometime this week. That night I barely slept. Every sound had teeth. Then came Thursday. Brian was working the overnight shift. I was alone, grading essays at the dining room table. The house was quiet, too quiet. The kind of silence that presses in on your skin like humidity before a storm. At 9:32 p.m. the doorbell rang. I stood up, pulse thudding in my ears. No footsteps on the porch, no knock, just the bell. I turned on the porch light, slowly moved, toward the front door. I didn't open it right away, just listened. Nothing. I cracked the door open. There was no one there. But there were footprints. One set. Fresh, wet mud, trailing across the porch, leading to the side of the house. Not from the street, not to the driveway, just to us. I slammed the door, locked it, bolted everything I could. My hands were shaking. I couldn't breathe right. I grabbed my phone, whispered Brian's name as I crouched in the downstairs bathroom trying not to make a sound. He told me to stay hidden. Told me to call the police. 20 minutes later they arrived. They searched the yard, the fence line, the alley. Found nothing, no one, not even the car. But one of the officers stayed behind. He was older, graying at the temples, and he looked uneasy in a way I didn't like. When I described the man to him, the visitor, the one asking for Casey, he went still. "I think I know who that is," he said. My skin went cold. "Who?" He hesitated. "He used to live here. Got evicted. Some issues." "What kind of issues?" I asked. He looked down, then back up. "Nothing I can say officially. But if he shows up again, don't open the door. Just call us." That night, Brian and I walked through the house together. Every room, every closet, nothing missing, no sign of forced entry. But something was off. It felt like whoever had been there wasn't trying to break in. They were already inside, watching, waiting, or worse, remembering. And then, just when I thought it might all be over, I opened the front door the following morning and found something, taped to it. A note, one sentence written in thick red marker, all caps, "Tell Casey I'll find her. I always do. We didn't sleep for days." The note, "Tell Casey I'll find her, I always do," ripped something open inside me. Not fear, not exactly. Something colder, deeper, like I was being rewritten into someone else's nightmare. Brian tried to stay calm, for my sake. But I caught him checking the locks 3 times each night, carrying his pocket knife from room to room, sleeping with his arm wrapped around me like a barrier, as if his body could stop whatever had taken root in our home. We installed cameras, 4 outside, 1 in the living room, 1 in the hallway facing the front door. The first night we reviewed the footage, nothing happened. The second night too. On the third night we caught him, 18 a.m. The camera on the porch flickered, just for a second. Then there he was, same denim shirt, same dead eyes. But this time, he wasn't standing. He was crouching, inches from the door, perfectly still like a predator waiting for the right moment. He never knocked, never rang, just watched. Then, like he knew where the blind spots were, he crawled sideways out of frame. The video cut to static. I wanted to scream, but nothing came out. Brian rewound the footage 3 times, his jaw clenched so tight I thought his teeth would crack. The police came again. We showed them the video. One of the officers muttered something under his breath and walked off to make a call. The other one just stared at me. You said he used to live here? Yes, I whispered. He nodded slowly. Some people, they don't let go. Especially when something was taken from them. What does that mean? But he just turned and walked away. We started digging. I pulled every piece of paperwork from our closing documents. Nothing. No name. No mention of previous tenants except a bank-owned sale. The house had been foreclosed after a year of vacancy. I went to the records office in town, spent hours flipping through dusty files until I found a single eviction notice tied to our address. Issued in 2017, the name, James Wendell Caskey. It didn't click at first, until I said it out loud. Caskey. Casey. He wasn't looking for a woman. He was looking for himself, a fractured version of whoever he used to be. That night the dream started, not images, not memories, sensations, the feeling of eyes watching me from the closet, a hand brushing my ankle as I got into bed, the sound of breathing, wet, slow, right behind my ear, though I was alone in the room. Brian said I was talking in my sleep, muttering the same word over and over, tell him, tell him, tell him. But I didn't know what. I began hearing things during the day too. The sound of the doorbell ringing when no one was there, whispers from the vents. Once I swear I heard a voice whisper from the hallway right behind me. I know who you are now. Then came the final break. It was around 3 a.m. when we heard a crash. Brian jumped up, grabbed the bat from under the bed, and crept downstairs while I called the police again. I stayed on the line with dispatch, shaking, whispering into the phone as I waited in the bedroom. Then I heard Brian yell, raw, furious, and a second later the front door slammed. I ran down barefoot, heart pounding. The living room was torn apart. Couch cushions on the floor, the hallway mirror shattered, and the front door, wide open. Brian stood outside, breathing hard, scanning the street. He was inside, he said. I don't know how, but he was inside. But there were no signs of forced entry. All the locks were still engaged. We checked the footage. The cameras were dead. Every single feed had been cut at 2:47 a.m., like someone had flipped a switch inside the walls. The only thing left was a single grainy frame on the upstairs hallway cam, a figure just at the edge of the frame, almost invisible, standing in our bedroom doorway, watching us sleep. The next day we left. Didn't pack, didn't say goodbye, just drove. We checked into a hotel 2 counties over. Brian filed paperwork to sell the house. I never went back. A month passed. Then 2. I stopped checking the cameras. Stopped thinking about the note. I tried to convince myself it was over, until last week. I got an envelope in the mail. No return address. Postmarked from our old town. Inside was a single Polaroid photo. It was me. Standing on the porch of our new apartment, coffee in hand, and behind me, reflected faintly in the glass of the front door, was him, smiling, like he'd always been there. You ever feel like a house is watching you? Not the people in it, the house itself. Breathing, listening, waiting. I never believed in that kind of thing, until I moved into the bungalow on Lakehurst Avenue. It was July 2020, peak lockdown. The world had gone still and hollow. I had just left a long toxic relationship. My lease was up and my remote job said I could work from anywhere. So I left Boston, packed my life into a U-Haul and drove south until I landed in a quiet corner of Asheville, North Carolina. The place I found looked perfect on Zillow. 1930s charm, tree-lined street, original hardwood, wrap-around porch. Old, enough to feel like it had a story, but not so old it'd fall apart. I told myself I'd stay a year, maybe 2. Heal. Reset. From day 1, The house was quiet, but not peaceful. There's a difference. Peaceful is a soft breeze and birdsong. This was still. Oppressive, like being held in place by something just out of reach. The first thing that got under my skin was the attic. Specifically, the attic hatch. It sat dead center in the hallway ceiling. One of those old wooden squares with a pull string dangling like a spider's web. And it never shut completely. The corners sagged slightly as if the ceiling itself didn't want to hold it closed. I remember the first night standing beneath it barefoot in the dark, feeling this weird warmth just under the hatch, like a heavy breath from above. I reached up thinking maybe it was just the hot air rising, but it was moist. Not damp like a leaky pipe, humid, like someone had just taken a long, steaming shower right above me. No one was up there. No one ever was. I told myself it was insulation. Poor ventilation. It was an old house. That's what I do when I'm scared. I try to rationalize it away. But then the little things started happening. Things that made me feel insane, but were just subtle enough to dismiss. The cereal box I kept in the cupboard would show up on top of the fridge. My phone charger moved from my nightstand to the bathroom counter. The fridge door, slightly open in the morning, just enough for the light to stay on all night. Just enough to feel intentional. I live alone. Always have. I'm meticulous with routines. Neurotic even. I don't misplace things. I don't leave doors ajar. Then, one night I found my sneakers by the front door turned backward. Heel toward the door like someone had stepped out of them facing me. I hadn't even worn them that day. That's when I started taking pictures. Of everything. The blinds, my keys, the cereal box, before bed and after waking up. I needed proof. Not for anyone else, just for myself. Because either someone was in my house or I was falling apart. I didn't tell anyone. Not yet. Then, one night around 2:30 a.m., I was half asleep, doom scrolling on my phone, when I heard it, a cough. Not from outside. Not muffled by walls, directly above me. Short. Dry. Deliberate. I live in a one-story house. There's nothing above me except that goddamn attic. I didn't move. Just sat frozen, staring up at the ceiling. Listening. For footsteps. For movement. For anything. But it never came again. I didn't sleep that night. The next morning I called my buddy Caleb. Told him, jokingly sort of, that I thought I might have an attic goblin. He laughed. Dude, it's probably a possum or raccoon. You'd be surprised how loud those things get. But I wasn't hearing skittering. I was hearing breathing, coughing, something human. I started reading articles. People finding strangers living in their attics, in crawl spaces, in the walls. It's more common than you'd think. Some of them live like ghosts for weeks without anyone knowing. So I bought a flashlight, pulled down the attic ladder one afternoon and climbed up with a broom handle and a kitchen knife tucked in my waistband. The moment I lifted the hatch, the heat hit me, like a punch. The air was thick, humid, and sour, like sweat and garbage. I shined the light around. The attic looked empty, just insulation, cobwebs, and exposed beams. But the air, it felt used, like it had been breathed. And even though nothing moved, I couldn't make myself go further. Something inside me whispered, "Get out. Now." I backed down the ladder and slammed the hatch shut. That night, I set up my phone on a tripod and aimed it at the attic door, just to see. I hit record and left the hallway light on. Then I went to bed. Every creak in the floor made me flinch. Every car passing outside sounded like someone whispering beneath the floorboards. I didn't sleep. I just waited. At 4:13 a.m., I heard it. The sound of wood flexing, like someone shifting their weight on old boards. But I didn't move. I couldn't. When morning came, I scrambled to grab my phone, hands trembling. 6 hours of nothing. Until 3:47 a.m. right there, clear as day, the attic hatch shifted. Not much. Just a slow wobble. Then, it opened, deliberate, silent, and something came out, a bare foot, then a hand, gaunt, pale. The figure lowered itself down the ladder slowly, smoothly, like it had done it 1,000 times. I couldn't see the face. The hallway light was behind it, casting the shape into silhouette, but I saw the outline, thin, wiry, wrong. It stepped off the ladder and walked out of frame, and the video ended. I watched it twice before I realized I was shaking so hard I'd bitten the inside of my cheek. I ran to the bathroom and threw up. That thing, that person, had been living in my ceiling, watching me, breathing with me, walking my halls while I slept, and it wasn't trying to hide anymore. I called the police the moment I could speak without shaking. They showed up fast. 2 officers, both younger than me, both trying to act like this was just another weird call in a weird town. I showed them the footage. One of them raised an eyebrow. The other one leaned in closer and said, "That doesn't look like a raccoon." They pulled down the attic hatch and climbed up, flashlights sweeping across the beams. 10 minutes passed. Then I heard one of them say, "Hey, you should see this." I didn't want to, but I went. At the far corner of the attic, tucked behind a broken AC duct, they found it. A foam camping mattress rolled into a corner. 2 empty water bottles. An open jar of peanut butter with fingerprints smeared along the rim. And a spiral notebook. The officer picked it up, flipped through it, and immediately set it down like it was burning his fingers. "Don't look at that," he said, gently but firmly. I didn't listen. I opened it. Page after page, drawings. All of me, pencil sketches. Hundreds of them. Me watching TV. Me brushing my teeth. Me eating cereal. Me sleeping. All drawn from angles that should have been impossible, unless someone had been watching me through vents, through cracks in the floor, from above. Some of the pages had writing in the margins, shaky, obsessive handwriting. Over and over again. "I want her to stay. She breathes like the last one. Don't let her leave." I left that day. Didn't pack, didn't care. My friend Caleb let me crash on his couch. A week later, I hired a company to move my things. I didn't step foot in that house again, but I couldn't escape it. I started having panic attacks when I walked into rooms with high ceilings. I couldn't sleep unless I could see every inch of the room. No closets, no crawl spaces, no attic doors. I moved to a 3rd-floor apartment in a modern building with 0 history. Concrete ceilings, no upper level, no chance of someone being above me. Or so I thought. It was 2 months later when it happened. I'd just gotten home from the grocery store, set the bags down, locked the door, felt the rare sense of control that comes from surviving something unspeakable. Then I walked into my bedroom and stopped cold. There, sitting on my nightstand, was the spiral notebook, the same one from the attic, covered in dust, smudged fingerprints along the edges. I hadn't brought it with me. I had never touched it again. I opened it slowly. Only one new drawing had been added. Me, standing in my bedroom doorway, holding the notebook, staring down at it. And in the far edge of the sketch, barely visible in the mirror's reflection, was the outline of a face. Behind me. Some houses whisper, others watch. But this house? It remembered things. I found it in the fall of 2022. while scrolling through foreclosure listings in Tennessee. I'd just come off a messy breakup and a failed job contract. I needed something to fix outside myself, something I could turn into profit and control. So I bought the house on Whitlow Drive, a 1950s red brick single-story with ivy strangling one side and a sunroom that looked like it had survived a war. The interior was dated but solid. Hardwood floors, real plaster walls, ancient thermostat mounted like a relic in the hallway. The listing said fixer-upper. I called it my reset button. The first few days were quiet. Breezy mornings, golden light through the cracked blinds. I painted kitchen cabinets, mapped out budget plans, and for the first time in months I slept through the night, until I stepped into the hallway closet. There was something off about the floor, a slight tilt, almost like stepping on a loose tooth. It creaked differently than the other boards, like it was deeper, hollow. Every time I stored cleaning supplies inside, I felt like I was standing on top of something. On day 6, I finally pulled everything out. There it was. A square outline, nearly flush with the rest of the floor, painted to match, no handle, no latch, no indication that it was meant to open, but it wanted to open. I could feel it. That night I grabbed a crowbar from the garage. I hesitated before I wedged the metal into the seam. And when I finally pried it up, the house exhaled. No, I'm not being dramatic. I mean it. The air shifted in a way that made the back of my neck crawl. Dust billowed upward, thick and warm, smelling of rotted flowers and something burnt. I pointed my flashlight down and saw stairs. Not proper stairs. Just uneven wooden steps leading into darkness. A crawl space, maybe, but deeper than any. Crawl space had a right to be. I should have waited until morning. I didn't. I descended. The air grew colder, heavier. Not cool like a basement, dense like it hadn't been touched by oxygen in years. When I reached the bottom, I nearly gagged. The space wasn't empty. A makeshift platform had been built out of old wooden planks in the center of the dirt floor. On top of it, a circle of melted candle stubs, dozens of them, all burned down to nubs, wax fused into the wood like veins. In the middle of the circle, a mound of dried flower petals, and something tangled in them. Hair. Human hair. Long. Short. Curly. Straight. All different colors. Some clippings. Some ripped. I swallowed bile and turned to leave, but something caught my eye. Just outside the circle, half buried in the dust, was a Polaroid photo. I picked it up. It was my living room. Same couch, same table, same crooked lamp, but the photo looked old, faded, yellowed, like it had been there for years. And standing in the center of the room was a figure wearing a mask, not a store-bought mask. This one looked homemade, papier-mâché molded over, burlap, with hollow black eyes and no mouth, just a blank, sagging expression. I dropped the photo and ran upstairs. I slammed the hatch shut, hammered it closed, and stacked boxes on top of it like that would keep the memory inside. But it didn't. That night I couldn't stop looking over my shoulder. The house felt wrong, heavier, like it had noticed me. Then came the smell. Not constant, just lingering, like blown-out candles, wet earth, and something waxy rotting in the vents. I opened every window. The smell stayed. The next day, my dog, Baxter, who never barked, refused to go near the hallway closet. He stared at it, whining softly, tail low, until I had to carry him to the other side of the house. I told myself it was nothing. Old houses creak. Old houses stink. But I couldn't shake the feeling that I'd woken something up. Then, 4 nights later, I was watching TV in the sunroom. The air was thick, my skin clammy for no reason. I got up to grab water from the kitchen. When I came back, the photo was sitting on the counter, the one from the crawl space. I hadn't brought it up. I hadn't even touched it since that night. No, one else had keys. No one else knew. I picked it up with trembling fingers. The masked figure was still in the photo, but the angle had changed. Now it was looking directly at the camera, standing closer. As if it had moved, as if it had seen me. I backed away, heart thundering, then something knocked, 3 times. But not on the door, not on the walls, from under the floor. I didn't sleep that night, not even a minute. I sat in the kitchen with the lights on, phone in one hand, the photo in the other, waiting for something, anything to make sense. But the only sound was the faint hum of the fridge and the clock ticking like it was counting down. When the knock came again, it was softer. 2 taps. Then a drag, like nails scraping across wood from beneath the floorboards. I called my contractor, friend Nate. I didn't tell him everything, just that I found a weird subfloor space and I needed it sealed. Immediately. He showed up the next morning with tools, a headlamp, and enough curiosity to make me nervous. We opened the hatch together. The smell was worse now. Not just rot, something sour, like sweat soaked into old walls. Nate descended first. I followed halfway, flashlight in hand. He was quiet, for a long time. Then in a low voice he said, "You need to see this." I stepped down onto the dirt floor. He was standing at the far wall, pointing at the support beams. They were carved up. Deep scratches, claw-like marks, dragged into the wood. But they weren't random. They formed symbols. Some familiar, circles, crosses, triangles. Others I'd never seen. Twisted shapes that vibrated in my brain just by looking at them. In the corner was a second Polaroid. Fresh, crisp, still developing when I picked it up. It was me, standing on the landing above the crawl space, right where I had been, holding a flashlight. In the photo, my eyes were closed, my mouth slightly open, and behind me, the mask, closer, clearer now. I staggered backward, heart punching against my ribs. Nate asked if I was okay. I told him to seal it, all of it, immediately. He didn't argue. We cut new. Boards, nailed them down, painted over the seams, and pushed my heavy dresser on top. I left the house 2 days later, rented a room on the opposite side of the city. Told myself it was just stress, grief, trauma, maybe mold, maybe a gas leak. Rational lies are comforting like that. I put the house up for sale without stepping back inside. I didn't tell the real estate agent what I'd found. I didn't care. I just wanted it gone. Weeks passed. I started to breathe again. I stopped jumping at shadows. I started thinking about what I might do next. Then, one evening, I was showing a rental unit to a new client. Clean, modern, no crawl spaces, no past. Just drywall and engineered flooring. My phone buzzed. An alert from the smart camera app I forgot I'd never disconnected from the Whitlow Drive house. Motion detected, 3:03 a.m., sunroom. My heart kicked. Against my better judgment, I opened the feed. The screen glitched, then flickered into a grainy image. The camera was shaking, barely, but enough to see the living room couch, the lamp, the sunroom door beyond. There, in the center of the room, stood a figure. Not a man. Not anymore. Tall. Still. Mask fixed to its face like it had been carved from the bone beneath. It wasn't looking at the camera. It was staring at the hatch. But the hatch was sealed, buried. The figure raised its hand slowly and pressed its palm against the floor. Then, on the screen, the dresser moved inches, but enough. The figure didn't smile. It didn't move again. The feed cut to black. I deleted the app. I shut the laptop, and I've never spoken a word of it out loud until now. But sometimes, in places that are too quiet, I swear I hear that sound again. 3 knocks. Then the slow drag of something waking up. Below. The floor. They say the safest neighborhoods are the ones that hide the worst things. I used to roll my eyes at that, until I moved to Magnolia Lane. After 10 years grinding through billable hours at a corporate law firm in Atlanta, I finally got the promotion. Office view, title bump, salary that made me feel like I'd done everything right. I celebrated by doing something I'd always dreamed of. I bought a house, just for me. It was a historic property in a quiet little Virginia suburb, Elmhurst. Colonial-style brick front, wrap-around porch with chipped paint and character, nestled between 2 tall sycamores tucked behind picket fences and brick sidewalks where kids rode scooters and retirees trimmed their hedges like it meant something. It was perfect. Too perfect. From the day I moved in, the house felt like a reward. I remember standing in the living room that first night holding a glass of wine, the echo of emptiness around me like applause. Then the doorbell rang. I wasn't expecting anyone. No one even knew my address yet. I opened the door cautiously. There, she was, late 60s, maybe early 70s. Gray hair pinned back, floral blouse, bright smile. She held out a plate of cookies like some living stereotype. "Welcome to the neighborhood, sweetheart," she said. "I'm Helen. I live just there." She pointed to the house next door, a pale yellow 2-story with flower beds and wind chimes. Smiled, thanked her, and we chatted for a few minutes. She asked where I was from, what I did, if I planned to repaint the shutters. Then she said something that didn't register until later. Her eyes flicked past me toward the living room, and she smiled wider. "You kept the rug," she said. "That's nice, it really suits the room." Only I hadn't kept the rug. The staging company had used a beige and navy rug. I had my own, gray with sharp edges and geometric patterns. The rugs were similar, sure, but her tone hadn't been casual. It was familiar, like she'd already seen inside my house. I brushed it off. Maybe she'd seen the listing photos. But a week later, I found a folded note tucked into my mailbox. No envelope, no name. Just one sentence typed out in blocky font. "You look better than the last one." No signature. No return address. I called the real estate agency, asked if the previous owner had mentioned anything strange. They told me the last tenant had moved out after a divorce. Nothing unusual. But something in me twisted. I started noticing Helen more, in the window. Always in the window. Her 2nd-story bedroom faced mine. And every night, every single night, I'd look up to see her standing there behind the curtains, just a silhouette in the yellow lamplight. Not moving, not waving, just watching. Sometimes, she was still there at 3 a.m. when I got up to pee. Sometimes her lights were off, but I could make out the faintest outline in the window. Like she didn't need light to see. One evening, I got home late from work. It was dark out. I unlocked the front door and stepped inside, feeling that bone-deep fatigue that only comes after 12 hours of depositions and phone calls. Then I noticed it, the smell, a soft, lingering scent, like cheap perfume and something metallic. I followed it to the kitchen. Nothing. To the bedroom. Nothing. I opened my closet and found a piece of paper folded neatly on top of my underwear drawer, typed. Same blocky font. 7:15 a.m. She showers. 9:30 p.m. Left side of the couch. Tuesday. Trash night. That was my routine. Exactly. Times, locations, habits, things I never told anyone. I looked up, heart pounding, and scanned the room for cameras. Nothing visible. That night I slept on the couch with the lights on. The next morning, I bought a camera system, motion detectors inside and out, app notifications, cloud backup. I installed everything before sunset. Then I called my friend Jason. He works cybersecurity now. I told him I thought someone might have bugged the house. He didn't laugh. He showed up the next day with a handheld detector and started scanning. The vents, the walls, the outlets. We found it in the bedroom vent above my bed. A tiny black pinhole lens, almost invisible. Hidden inside what looked like a regular screw head, wired to nothing, no power source, no light, but it worked. The camera app picked up motion at 3:04 a.m. that night. I watched the footage the next morning with trembling fingers. It was a still shot of my bedroom. I was asleep. And for 17 minutes the camera recorded nothing but me breathing. But in the final frame, the one before the clip ended, Helen was standing at her window, her face lit up, not by a lamp, by the glow of a screen. After that final frame, Helen's face glowing in the window, I stopped sleeping. Not just the insomnia kind. I refused to sleep. I kept every light on. I started leaving the TV running at low volume to drown out the creaks in the floor, the wind in the trees, and the possibility of whispers. I called the police the next day. They were polite, but tired, like I was interrupting their lunch break. I showed them the footage, the notes, even the tiny camera Jason had pulled from the vent. They wrote everything down, nodded a lot, and promised to look into it. I didn't hear back, so I called a lawyer. He told me unless Helen trespassed or made a direct threat, there wasn't much I could do. No evidence she installed the camera, no prints, no confession. The house had too many past owners. It could have been anyone. And then he asked me the worst question of all. Do you think you're overreacting? That night I started packing. I didn't care if it meant breaking the mortgage contract. I just wanted out. But before I could leave, the cameras picked up something else. 11 a.m. Motion detected in the living room. I was awake when the notification buzzed. I opened the app. The footage was choppy, skipping every few seconds. But I could make out the outline of the room, my couch, the lamp, and something moving, not walking, crawling, something low to the ground, dragging itself across the hardwood on all fours. It moved from the edge of the hallway toward the camera. Closer. Frame. Skips closer, and then its head lifted. It wasn't Helen, it was a man, emaciated, gaunt, wearing nothing but boxer shorts and a grimy undershirt. His face was pale and waxy, and his eyes reflected the infrared like an animal in headlights. He stared directly into the camera, unmoving, for a full 5 seconds. Then the feed cut to black. I screamed, called the cops again. This time they came fast. 3 squad cars, flashlights, guns drawn. They found no signs of forced entry, every door locked, every window secure. But when they searched the basement crawl space, one of the officers called for backup. In the far corner, behind the water heater, hidden behind a loose panel in the wall, was a nest. Blankets, crumbs, water bottles, a single camping lantern, empty food wrappers, and a small leather-bound notebook. The pages were filled with shaky handwriting, dozens of entries, all in third person. She watered the plants at 8:03. She cried after reading something on her phone. She looked at herself in the mirror for a long time tonight. She locked the door again. She doesn't trust the neighborhood. The last page simply read, Helen said not to talk to her, just watch. I couldn't breathe. The officers asked if I knew anyone named Matthew. I said no. They asked if I'd ever seen this man before. I hadn't. They took the notebook and said they'd look into it. That was it. No arrest, no charges, no justice. They said the guy probably entered months ago and had been living inside the walls, using the crawl space to move through the structure, undetected. They said he was gone now, but I don't believe them. I sold the house a week later, took a loss. Didn't care. I moved across the country to Portland, Oregon. High-rise apartment. Top floor, no attic, no basement. No next-door neighbor peering in through a curtain, and for a while things were quiet. Until last night. I came home from work, dropped my keys, kicked off my shoes, walked into the kitchen. There, taped to the refrigerator, was a single piece of paper typed, blocky font. "You kept the rug, that's nice, it suits the room. I live on the 15th floor. There's no Helen next door." But when I looked out the window, across the street, in a building I've never noticed before, a woman was standing at her window. No smile, no movement, just watching. If you made it this far, you're braver than most. If these stories chilled you even a little, go ahead and hit that like button. It really helps me bring you more horror, more darkness, and more truth. Share this video with someone who thinks they're not afraid of the dark, and if you haven't already, subscribe. Join us. There's always another story waiting, and right now, the one playing on your screen might just be the scariest of them all. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next nightmare.